Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the B Team Analytics podcast, your home for NBA analytics. And today, I really just want to start off by thanking the viewers because I want to start on a happy note. Let's say that because some of the stuff I'm touching today can get a little sad. So let's start on a positive. So, Ep.7 is this podcast. I didn't think we would make it this far. Honestly, when I started this podcast, I thought it was going to be 3 episodes and I would lose interest. But we're on Ep.7 talking about the NBA. I would just want to thank all the viewers who've, stuck with me this far. We are actually, I'm not going to share my view count because it's kind of sad, but I'm still doing this because I love talking about the NBA, and everyone who's still listening, who, likes hearing me talk about the NBA, thank you so much. You are the reason I do this. So, with the happy notes out of the way, today's episode, I think we're going to be talking about some news to start off with. Really big week of NBA news this week. So, I think we're going to start off with that. And then finally, I think we're going to get into the trades that happened. We're, 2.5 weeks late on this, but hey, better late than never. So I think those are going to be kind of what we're talking about this week. Definitely a lighter episode this week, maybe a little shorter, but still want to get you some content for this week. Obviously, we're just coming out of the All-Star break. On the screen next to me, I have the Memphis-Cleveland game going on, and this has been a really fantastic game. So maybe we'll talk about that next week. And next week, I also really, really want to do my 4 factors episode, something that I've really wanted to do for a while. And I think next week's final week, I'm going to have some time to sit down and do it. Been kind of crazy the last couple weeks, so I think that's going to be next week's episode. So with all that said, let's jump into the news. It was a crazy week this week. Alrighty, so why I started with just some happy news. Our news article number 1, Spurs coach Greg Popovich is not expected to return this season, and long-term future is unexpected or uncertain at this current moment. And most of my life, I've been a really big Greg Popovich fan. And kind of seeing news like this really just kind of sucks because it's really, honestly, an end of an era here. I thought we'll just start off with, so obviously earlier this season, Greg Popovich suffered what is being reported as a minor stroke. This occurred, early November now. So he's been out a couple months and, all thoughts and prayers to his family. This is, sounding like he's doing okay, just not back to coaching form sort of thing. But this is a massive loss for the NBA. And the Spurs organization as well, especially with some other news that will come up later on in the episode here. So just to reflect on, Greg Popovich's career as a whole, because he is a living legend, one of, top 5 coaches of all time, honestly. And I thought we'll just roll down a little bit of memory lane here. And really, the Greg Popovich is probably the reason this podcast is named B Team Analytics. So just to start with, let's just roll through this dude's accolades because it is fantastic. So obviously, as everyone knows, he was hired to the San Antonio Spurs in the 96-97 season. Right around the time, there was a lot of concern that team was going to be shipped somewhere else, new city. Obviously, bringing in a coach like, Greg Popovich, who was, relatively unproven up to that point, was completely wild. But at the time, they did have, David Robinson, players like that, really kind of helped the team stay in the city. So in his 3rd season as head coach, he obviously won the NBA championship. Obviously, that was the first or second year with Tim Duncan. So that was there. He ended up going on winning 5 NBA championships. Most of the time, he was either first or second in the Western Conference. The lowest of his career was 6th in the Western Conference, and that was his first year. He went on a string, and I'm just going to rattle off, the 2000s. Let's start in 2000. He was first, second, 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 first. Fantastic. He was never out of the hunt once. Winning over 60 games. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times in that cycle in his career. And one thing people don't talk enough about is the 2015-16 Spurs team, because at the time that Golden State was going on their 72, whatever they went on, 72-9, was it? 73-9 spanned there. The San Antonio Spurs were 27-15. They were right behind them the entire way. Obviously, that Golden State team was inhuman, ultimately lost to LeBron. But the Spurs were right behind them, and no one talks about how good that Spurs team was that year. Obviously didn't go as far as they wanted to that year, but still had a fantastic regular season. I don't think enough people talk about that. Coach of the Year, he's won it 3 times. Fantastic, career overall. So overall, really love Greg Popovich. Has, the stats. Obviously a Hall of Famer a couple years ago. Loved his speech. That's one, it wasn't like a motivational one by any stretch of the imagination, but just listening to Greg Popovich talk just really kind of gives you the insight, because he doesn't talk a lot, and he went on for about 20-30 minutes talking, and it was pretty insightful. Just kind of see into Greg Popovich, see what he's all about, kind of all that sort of stuff. So would recommend. It's on YouTube. Just kind of go search it up. So the one thing I really want to talk about is the B team aspect. And this Spurs team were always about the B team, especially in their championship against Miami in 2013. That 2013-14 season when they upset the Miami Heat. One of the best series ever, because this is one of my favorite stats. So I went back, and the B team or the bench or whatever you want to call them was fantastic during this series. So in that series, Miami's bench scored about 23% of the total points they scored overall. That's 109 points. Starters for Miami scored 352, which is about 76%, which is normal. You're not going to get, mass numbers out of your bench most of the time, especially in, playoff scenarios where it's, tighter benches. You're maybe only rotating 8 or 9 guys in, sort of thing. Makes sense. This Spurs team, I remember this specifically, their bench scored almost 40% of their total points. Came out to be 37% of the total points, which is mind-boggling to me, because that bench won them that series, because it was literally just a LeBron show most of the time, and they would be getting killed whenever, LeBron had to go out, anything like that, because this bench just kept scoring, and it was just motion offense the entire time. People just pass and get open. It was beautiful basketball. Peak gloryful basketball, and it just makes me reminisce, man, But obviously this was slightly skewed because Manu Ginobili is a bench player, greatest 6 man of all time. Didn't start a single game in the series, fun fact. But it had 72 points total in the series, which was, fantastic. Really boost those kind of bench totals. But that was that sort of thing. So I really love that bench scoring. Just for comparison, the next year was the Golden State Cleveland series, the start of that four series sort of thing they did. And both benches scored about 20 points, which was back to normal scoring for everyone. So let's just take a minute to recognize how great this team was. And, the B team, always got to appreciate the B team, because any championship winning team has to have a good bench. You just have to. You can't win with 5 guys out there. Unless you're LeBron and you can take one guy and win the entire series, or at least take him to the playoffs. But, to have a very effective championship winning team, you need a bench. So shout out to the B team. Never forget. So that's kind of my rant on Greg Popovich. Obviously, a really sad situation happening there in San Antonio. So keep our thoughts with the Greg Popovich family for right now. So moving on to the other sad news coming out of the San Antonio Spurs this week. And unfortunately, Victor Wembanyama is getting shut down for the rest of the season due to a deep vein thrombosis in the upper left shoulder, I believe is what it is. If you are a normal human being who doesn't research random sort of injuries like this in your free time, you probably don't know what a deep vein thrombosis is. And basically what it is, it's more or less a blood clot in a vein deep into your skin. So think kind of shoulder area deep into that kind of, middle part of the arm. And it can be very dangerous because if that, blood clot were to, slip out, that goes directly to your heart, which causes a heart attack. So very, concerning injury. It's hard to call it an injury for Victor Wembanyama. And the reason he's getting shut down for the year is you have to be on blood thinners to kind of clear up these clots. And obviously you can't play a contact sport without on blood thinners, obviously. So very concerning situation there. A lot of people are giving their opinions, and I'm not in a place to give my opinion on, what happens. I'm not a medical professional. I work in Excel all day. So from the top, let's just comparatively. I love comparables. So let's talk comparatively. There's been 2 notable deep vein thrombosis situations in the NBA, which is shocking to me. But the first one was Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh actually had a similar issue, and this was more of a medical condition than an injury like the other one we'll talk about. But he obviously this injury or condition really made him retire from the NBA because, you have to be on constant blood thinners and all this, and it just ultimately derailed his career. And luckily, it was more towards the end of his career. Obviously, he won those 2 championships with LeBron and Wade and all that. So it wasn't like it was cutting his career super, super early. But in this case, if it is Victor Wembanyama, who's one of the most promising guys in the NBA right now, face of the franchise, this could turn into a Derrick Rose, what if situation? What if Victor Wembanyama didn't have this problem? What could that have done for the NBA? And all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the worst case scenario. The best case scenario, and what everyone's kind of hoping for, is Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram actually had this problem earlier in his career just due to, excessive motion of his arm. And just kind of stuff like that happens. If you get on the blood thinners, sit out for a while, it clears up, goes away, no more problems. He was back in the lineup, and obviously we know he's still playing to this day. So that's kind of the two camps that are really happening. And right now, we have no clue what's going to happen. It's currently up in the air. No one knows what's going to happen. So that's really all I kind of want to say on this situation right now. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of this because this is potentially, career altering for him, and then, altering for the NBA because this Spurs team was set up to be a winning franchise going forward. And that was all reliant on Victor Wembanyama. So definitely a situation we're going to continue to monitor. And obviously this is still very early into this thing. This really just kind of dropped off of a whim right before the All-Star break ended. So very interesting to see. We're going to keep tracking this, and we'll see what happens towards the end of the season sort of thing. And the final kind of crazy news coming out of the NBA is Bobby Portis being banned 25 games for the anti-drug violation policy in the NBA. And this is honestly kind of a crazy situation if true. This could be them just kind of covering their butts sort of thing to get this kind of get him off the record or get him off this kind of violation. But I'll kind of read this. So a direct kind of quote from his camp said, and this is coming from an ESPN article that Shames wrote, so take it how you want. Shames very polarizing character, obviously, but Bobby unintentionally took a pain medication called tramadol, thinking he was taking a pain medication called Troladol. Troladol is approved pain medication by the NBA and has been used for years. So, as a known dyslexic, this seems like an issue or situation I would totally do because those names are so darn close that I would just slip over my head. Obviously, tramadol is an illegal substance, or not illegal substance, but banned by the NBA for use. Tramadol, obviously, is a Schedule 4 narcotic. It is an opioid and does have, very addicting kind of qualities to it. So the NBA was like, hey, let's not. Troladol is just kind of an anti-inflammatory drug, not a scheduled drug, very, relatively safe, kind of an ibuprofen sort of thing. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional. Don't quote me on any of this sort of thing, but, more it's approved by the NBA to take sort of thing. And obviously with how close those names were, I, like I said, totally see how that could be a slip up. Continuing to read in the article, it looks like he did have a valid prescription for the tramadol. It was given to him by his assistant who thought it was Troladol. And tramadol, see, I'm already getting confused by just reading these names, recently was put on the banned substance list for the NBA. So maybe some overlap, maybe some confusion on what's banned, what's not banned. But the question kind of was, brought up of, hey, if this was an honest to God mistake, should he be banned for it sort of thing? Obviously Bobby Portis, is a great guy, great player, never had kind of any problem sort of thing. And is kind of like a, hey, let's turn the other cheek on this one. It sounds like it was an honest to God mistake. His camp sounded like he didn't know he was taking it. He didn't know he was taking, an illegal substance. It's just kind of a really bad situation, especially for this Bucks team who's, kind of struggling this season, especially with a trade we'll get to later. This Bobby Portis being out is kind of massive for them. Currently sitting in 5th place in the East, well off kind of that 6th spot. So they're not really in playoff or play-in kind of range right now. They're kind of safely into that spot. But especially coming down the end, he'll be coming back, right towards the end of the season. I think there's 26 games as of the time he was banned or his suspension would have started. So he's literally going to come back on basically the final game of the regular season. And, it'd be hard to quickly work back into, playing shape. Obviously he's going to be, conditioning, but it's not completely different to, actually playing in a game. So definitely a crazy situation. I don't think this will affect his career long term. Just, a freak situation kind of happened here, and it looks like he's going to have to pay, the consequences on this one. So really, really, really bad situation for him, but we will see how this Milwaukee team kind of fares without him, and especially on one of the trades we'll get to when they trade away, one of their best players. Definitely a weird situation there in Milwaukee. So with all the depressing news kind of out of the way, let's finally turn to the NBA trade deadline. And this trade deadline obviously did not disappoint. Before, the real craziness of February 6th kind of came around, which was the final day of the trade deadline, we obviously had that landmark trade of Luka Doncic for AD, which really kind of dominated the headlines for that week. And then, obviously, the craziness continued throughout the year. So I have the list here. We're just going to kind of go top to bottom, kind of hit kind of the bigger trades, and just kind of talk about what that impact has on the team. Alrighty, so first trade, I'm just going to quickly touch on. This really doesn't have much of an impact on a lot of people, but the Wizards traded for Marcus Smart, gave up Marvin Bagley III and Jonathan Davis. Kings receive Jake LaRivia. Don't know if I said that right. Kind of an inconsequential third player there. But what I really want to touch on here, Marcus Smart is one of my favorite players of all time. Honestly, probably third on my list behind Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And really, honestly, probably number one. If on most days I look back on kind of those early 2000 teams, 2015 comes to mind, those Marcus Smart teams. Great. Love that dude. But now he's just kind of sitting on a losers Wizards team. And obviously he's been a little hurt recently. So I think especially this Grizzlies team probably want to unload some cap space, especially for this offseason. Maybe wanting to pick up another player or two, but it really kind of sucks to see Marcus Smart on the Wizards and just kind of how bad they've been playing this year. Kind of just sucks. But that's all I wanted to touch on there. Just kind of hate to see that. The next one is the Raptors trading for Brandon Ingram and the Pelicans getting Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk. This was as simple as a continuing to tank trade here because let's just quickly look at the contracts coming up. They still have to deal with Zion Williams, who is getting paid for another 4 years, $163 million, which is completely crazy for a dude who's literally played half the games. They still have CJ McCollum for 2 more years, 1 more year after this. Deontay Murray obviously picked him up this offseason, so got that. Bruce Brown is on his final year of his contract. Then after that, it's, no one really, really good. So I don't know. Maybe this definitely was kind of a tank for Cooper Flag sort of thing because this team isn't really set up to do much else. Right now, this team has only won 13 games so far this season. They have looked absolutely dismal. Is that a word? Dismal. They've looked absolutely dismal this year as a team. And, Brandon Ingram was kind of their last bright spot most of the time for that team. So really, this is just a continue the tank as much as possible trade for the Pelicans. I think, Raptors pick up a really good Brandon Ingram still. Obviously, Brandon Ingram has been hurt, hasn't played for the Raptors yet, and honestly doesn't have a timetable on when he's going to come back. So very interested to kind of see how that plays out. I think Brandon Ingram's still a good player. I think this Raptors team, didn't really have to give up too much. Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk and a first-round pick, which, not a crazy haul, but, in return, they're getting a pretty decent player. So if you can get Brandon Ingram a little healthier, get him on the court, I think that's a good pickup for that team. Next up, another really blockbuster trade, and this one is more expected. They were talking about it for months. Obviously, the Miami Heat have been beefing with Jimmy Butler for, months now, and finally got a trade done. So Jimmy Butler's going to the Warriors. The Heat pick up Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and Devon Mitchell. The Jazz pick up Josh Richardson, KJ Martin, couple second-round picks. Pistons pick up Lindy Waters Jr. and Dennis Schroeder. And finally, the Raptors pick up PJ Tucker. So overall, massive deal. Obviously, Miami was done with Jimmy Butler and just wanted him off. So they weren't, too mad just getting back a couple pieces. The Warriors team so far has looked pretty good. I think now that Jimmy Butler is trying, I think he's done pretty well. He's signed a 2-year extension. I think it was $35 million or something like that. So he's kind of set for another couple years. He's 35 years old, so that would take him to his 37th age season. So we'll see how much time left he has, at least till he retires. But definitely a good pickup for the Warriors. The Heat, I think this was a good haul for them. Obviously, they're getting a really good Andrew Wiggins. Kyle Anderson just kind of is a cheap option. I think he's making about $8 million a year right now. So really good pickup. And then Devon Mitchell, don't know too much about him. I don't really want to go too deep into him as I don't know too much. But obviously kind of a little haul of group there. Really good for the Heat. I think they do lack some size to really kind of help out that team. But, this team still has Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Duncan Robinson. So, a lot of decent guys are out there. Jaime Jaquez, obviously kind of balling out right now. So they have decent guys, but it's just a really, really small lineup right now. So I'm interested to see. Spoelstra is a fantastic coach, so I don't think not too worried with how they might play sort of thing, but definitely something to keep a watch out for. So next up, I think the funniest trade of the night, or the day, night, whatever you want to call it. The Mark Williams and Dalton Connect trade actually was rescinded afterwards because of injury concerns to Mark Williams. And what's funny about this one, so it happened, there's still a couple games before the All-Star break. So Dalton Connect obviously rested those 2 games just because, if you get traded, it kind of sucks, especially out of nowhere. And then obviously then you have to come back and you're like, oh, hey guys, ready to play. No. So he took 2 games off, went into the All-Star break, had a fantastic Rising Stars game, and then came back, and it's really helping that team out a little bit. So, and we've talked at lengths on how this Lakers team will look, but definitely, I think Dalton Connect was the better player in this trade. I don't think Mark Williams was going to do too much. It definitely helped with the size down low for them. But if he's getting rescinded because of injury, you just have another Anthony Davis out there. So definitely something to look at. And next up, the trade that kind of baffled my mind. Chris Middleton was shipped off from the Bucks for Kyle Kuzma, which made absolutely no sense to me because Giannis and Chris Middleton are, best friends, like, 2 peas in the pod sort of thing. And you just kind of up out and trade him. Completely baffled my mind. And like I was looking at it, Giannis still has, 3 years on his contract. I was really afraid that he might have started asking for a trade because that move kind of stupid. Obviously, Chris Middleton had some injury concerns. I think it came out that Chris Middleton, Dame Lillard, and Giannis only played like 3 playoff games together or something crazy like that. So we really never got to see kind of that Wizards team at full strength. But just kind of crazy to see that they move on from someone like Chris Middleton, who's played fantastic for this franchise. Kyle Kuzma's kind of Kyle Kuzma. Not going to give you much every night, but definitely a decent role player to kind of throw out there. So I'm interested to see kind of how this Bucks team plays going forward. And the final trade I kind of want to touch on here is the Spurs acquisition of De'Aaron Fox, which I think is a fantastic pickup for this team. Obviously, And fun story on this: De'Aaron Fox was traded from the Kings for Zach LaVine and 3 first-round picks, which are 2 more first-round picks than the Mavs got for Luka Doncic. So, and literally, I've clicked post on my Luka Doncic trade video, and I like in that video or podcast, I basically said, yeah, I think this will reset the market on, NBA trades. And then this trade happens for 3 first-round picks. I'm like, well, that opinion was wrong. But definitely very interesting trade. And I think this De'Aaron Fox trade is fantastic for them because with Chris Paul, let's back up. When Wemby is not hurt, let's start there. I think this is a fantastic trade for them because you have Chris Paul out there. Now you have, kind of a youthful 2 guard in, De'Aaron Fox out there. You got to keep, guys like Stephon Castle, who's, really proved himself so far this year as a great guy. So you really kind of had, a 4-starter lineup right there who could give you decent minutes and I think would play really well together. Obviously, that kind of got blown up with the Wemby injury, but, this gives time for De'Aaron Fox to kind of get in the rhythm. He's going to be kind of a number 1, number 2 option now with Wemby hurt. So I'm interested to see kind of with that injury how this team kind of faces, with not having your number 1 option out there anymore. So I think this was definitely the win of the trade deadline was this trade. I think Spurs got so much better, got to keep, their real core the young guys they have on the team, and I think overall win for them. So with that being said, I think we're going to wrap the podcast up there. Obviously, this Memphis Cleveland game still going on. I think it's still really good. I'm going to cut in towards it, like right after this, a clip of me recording when the fight happened in this game. I think it was a really funny reaction because I was trying to look up some stats, and then all of a sudden I look to the left and it's like everything's going crazy. So with that, enjoy the final clip of the night here. And if I don't get to see it till next weekend, I hope you watch a basketball game. Whoa, fight! Holy shit, hold on. Dude, there's a fight in the Cavs game. What? All right, I'm sticking this at the end of the episode because this is completely nuts right now. Memphis-Cleveland game, 3rd quarter. Oh, don't go to commercial right now. What? This is going to really test my editing skills here. Oh, okay, when's the commercial? We'll come back. We'll come back to that. Back to the fight. Hold on. Sorry. This is games I've watched this week. This is an impromptu games I've watched this week, honestly. This is a fight in the game. Cleveland left the bench. Let's first start there. This is live reactions. This is brand new for the podcast. No word yet. Started with Donovan Mitchell and Aaron Baines fighting for the ball, and then it just de-escalated from there. I really don't want to have to edit all this. That's so stupid. Nothing I hate more in the NBA is double technicals, because Aaron Baines and Donovan Mitchell just got techs, and then John Morant and someone else got a technical. And they just offset. It makes absolutely no point. You're just throwing technicals for no reason at that point. So that was the fight. There was your games I've watched this week. Little highlight there for you. Max Strus just drills a 3 afterwards. That's kind of cool. All right, back to Greg Popovich. This Memphis-Cleveland game is really good. I don't know why I started recording during this game. Like, honestly, what's the final game of the night? I don't know, Oklahoma City, Memphis also is going to be really good. That kind of sucks.